Hello, my name's Stewart McCulloch. I'm the CEO of Stewardship, and today I'm talking to Dr John Kirkby CBE, the founder of Christians Against Poverty and a very dear friend.
Yeah, just Johnny Boy, Stewart. Just Johnny Boy.
Johnny Boy, right.
That'll do.
I'm good. You and I have spent quite a bit of time together during lockdown, and it's been a real privilege to get to know you in a variety of different guises as we've done this. But we're at a point in time where people have responded to the initial health crisis and to lockdown and all the challenges that brings to a point where we've done what we needed to do, and now we're looking forward to an uncertain future.
Yeah.
What do you see the key differences for leaders of churches and charities as that shift happens, and how are you looking at it?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's been an unprecedented time for most people. The pendulum is swinging from this is what you must do to huge amounts of options with lots of uncertainty. So I think at this time, leadership is really going to come to the fore. It's really good news, but it's also a challenge. So the quality of decisions that leaders make, be it in churches, be it in charities, in companies, are literally very, very, very important. And add uncertainty to an unsure future, then leadership intuition together with teamwork is going to play a big part. So definitely pendulum change. And I've seen that and watched that.
What you needed to do is pretty obvious in the season that's gone. In the season ahead, there's lots of options. So what would you be saying to? Imagine it's me. What would you be saying to someone like me, as in a leadership position, who's wrestling with those things and feels a little isolated?
Yeah, I think our faith has to play a huge part of our individual journey as a leader. I was reading one of my life application scriptures yesterday as I was speaking to CAP in New Zealand and some of the church leaders out there around, where Jesus says, do not throw away your confidence, it will be richly rewarded. That's Hebrews 10:34. And I think in the midst of the challenges, I really think it's important that we do not throw our confidence in Christ, our confidence, our faith, that really in these difficult times, again, one of my and Liz's life application scriptures is in James. I basically record lots and lots around my Bible dates of things that happened. And in 1 James, it says, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, when you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. And perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. I think the truth is that it's almost the way that we approach the challenges, I think, is really, really critical, that we shouldn't throw away our confidence and we must see the bigger picture. I think, the more challenging, the more uncertain, the bigger the problem. I often think it's really important for leaders to kind of zoom out a little bit. And certainly, I'm not the CEO of CAP here in the UK or any of the countries we work in, but I've watched our CEOs and I found myself just having that ability to just kind of think a little bit bigger and longer. And I think that organizations well led will come through this, and it will be different and it will be difficult, but I'm believing that all things work for the good of those who love the Lord, and I'm expecting Christians Against Poverty, along with many of the charities and churches, despite the challenge and the change, that we would come out of it stronger, that it would develop within us deeper resilience and perseverance, and that we would become more mature. And when you think of God's promises of complete, not lacking anything, that definitely would be the goal that I think we're aiming for.
I like the Romans 5:3, from perseverance comes character, from character comes hope, and you and I witnessed some really interesting leadership things during this lockdown period as we did our work on the Rapid Response Fund. Yep. In that we saw people have lots of problems about their income, their congregation, they're all problem, but they said, I'm going to step out in faith.
Yeah.
And they went really boldly and we saw people feed the hungry,
Yeah.
give fellowship to the lonely, and address really difficult issues such as marginalized communities, domestic abuse, mental health. I mean, it's like there was no limit to the boldness, bravery, and kindness of the church that you and I witnessed. And we'd be on calls with these church leaders, and their calmness under fire was the most astounding thing I think I've ever witnessed in my entire career. What's your reflections on that?
I love to see things change. I'm an entrepreneur, really. I'm a pioneer. So change, I think, is really important. Never settling, always believing and expecting for more. And I think the three things that have marked out leaders, and I think as we go forward from this, will continue to mark out leaders, is those three things that we talked about. That sense of acting quicker, really, really important, but also praying deeper, but fundamentally loving greater. I feel that those three aspects, certainly as a leader, we often talk about, my grandkids are going to do this as part of their GCSE exam. They're going to be looking back on what happened.
I mean, all of a sudden, all the sort of the sort of status and everything else goes away, and you're just there, you're in the moment, you've got a whole set of problems to solve, and your perseverance, your character, your experience, and your skills are all tested all at once. And it's a very exposing moment. I mean, because we all had that moment right at the beginning where we went, oh, what next, and what are the steps we're going to take? What do you think in terms of what we've seen from the skills of Christian leaders? What's worked really well in this sort of environment? What have we learned in this environment? What must we do better in the future, do you think?
Your question is always very easy, Stuart, which is great, very probing. I think the thing that always inspires me is the wisdom that somehow God gives us, which is kind of beyond our own experience or intuitive thinking. And again, these verses are, they have again followed me for years. And I think this whole sense of finding wisdom is really, really important. And Proverbs 8 has been a huge, has brought me back at many, many points. It says this, it says, does not wisdom call out? Does not understanding raise her voice? At the highest point along the way, where the path meets, she takes her stand. This is wisdom. Beside the gates leading to the city, at the entrances, she cries aloud. To you, O people, I call out. I raise my voice to all mankind. And those verses really speak to me. First of all, where the path meets at the highest point. This is at a crossroads. This is two paths meeting. It is a crossroads. And I love the simplicity in Proverbs where it says, at the crossroads, that's where wisdom is. And in my Bible, it says wisdom calls out. But I love the translations around wisdom shouts. I really do believe that one of the things that should mark us out as Christian leaders is that, first of all, we recognize we're at a crossroads. Secondly, we have the humility to admit we don't absolutely know which is the best way to go, and that we listen for God's wisdom. And combined with his word, combined with good friends, combined with humility and openness, I believe that one thing that I've definitely seen that's really blesses me to see is Christian leaders making good, humble decisions, seeking and receiving wisdom from God. And Proverbs 8, it goes on about, choose wisdom rather than cost of gold or silver, for nothing you desire can compare with her. I just think wisdom. And my gosh, do we need wisdom right now? But the word says it is going to be there, and it does shout out, but you have to listen and you have to approach it with a sense of understanding the responsibilities of leadership. Our decisions really count in people's lives, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon with what's coming around the corner.
John, I completely agree. I mean, in my own case, I based a lot of the theology of my role within stewardship on 2 Corinthians 8 and 9, where Paul he's acting he's raising a very large gift from the Gentiles in Greece to take to the saints in Jerusalem. I mean, remembering this is an economic gift, and he just brought access to eternal life. So this is more than a fair exchange, but it reveals not just the gift, but the economy of grace. And I based an awful lot of my theology on these two chapters of the Bible. So COVID occurs, and I go back to that. And I said, well, what does it say? And really expecting it wouldn't say very much. And then I noticed in verse 1, 2, and 3, it refers to the severe trials of the Macedonian church.
Yeah.
So the thing starts in a crisis, and you suddenly go, you know, I thought I was so familiar with those verses, knew them off by heart, but I went back and there was the wisdom that I was looking for. I thought it must say, maybe it does say, you know, literally in the first 3 verses, it refers to generosity in a severe trial. And that's where, you know, my heart came for back to a test you had, which was, what will my grandchildren say? I've only got one of them at the moment, so grandchild, you know, about what grandfather was doing during COVID. So John, we've got to face the difficulties of money in this time. I mean, we're going into a pretty severe economic crisis, and really in the middle of lockdown, the Evangelical Alliance led a really big survey of churches, which was supremely timely and important, I believe, and quite a detailed report. I mean, what struck me was over 60% of churches and charities said that they were going to take a reduction in income of over a quarter. Now that's massive. And when you looked at it, about a quarter were saying that they had enough reserves to do really well, which is fantastic. That's great news. But another quarter that said they were really on their uppers. And half of people were somewhere in the middle and definitely struggling. So it painted a very sort of difficult picture of their finances. And what's more, what struck me was over 40% of such organisations use the government furlough scheme because they literally had to. Yeah. And if I look at the work we've done through Stewardship and Kingdom Bank, I'd say those numbers were reflected in what we were doing in helping people furlough through our payroll schemes and also rearrange mortgages. About 25% of the 500 churches that have mortgages with us had to rearrange them, take some sort of holiday or other things. So we're talking, you know, probably a quarter really struggling very badly, half of churches and charities finding it really quite difficult, and then you know, some doing all right, but then how were they then responding positively? What's your sort of takeaway from that really difficult situation for leaders of charities and churches?
Yeah, it's probably been one of the biggest things that I've been asked over the last few months. Obviously, my whole life has been involved in finance, in business, in charity, in church. Yeah, I'm not great at the old English stuff, but the maths always has been a strong point. So I've been asked lots of questions around this, and I think it's really important that we all realise that there are probably kind of three stages to this crisis, and that they require different responses. I think the first thing is the truth is we really do not know what is going to happen. I've never been a great believer of spreadsheets, but I have to say most of the spreadsheets that anybody shows me right now, I just kind of know they're going to be wrong. No one knows what's going to happen in the future. So we need to be a little bit careful that we don't let the kind of spreadsheet guessing really sort of impact the kind of decisions, because everything will change. But the first thing, and it is absolutely critical, and I've been inspired to see people do this, is the survival stage. This is the stage when the number one objective is simply to survive. I remember, I've seen CAP grow in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and now in the States. But I remember about 9 years ago in Australia, perfect storm came. We had to make some very, very difficult decisions. One of the worst days of my 30 years of ministry, when we had to make 14 people redundant. We just had to do some things to make sure to survive. Now it's gone on from that and has become very strong and has grown across Australia. But, I am someone who understands decisions have to be made. And most of those decisions probably haven't yet been made, but they are coming to a church, to a ministry near you, and we're not excluded from that. So the survival mode is really important. And then the second thing is what I would call, and these things can run simultaneously, there are certain things you have to do for survival, but you can't just do survival. You have to begin to look a little bit longer term. And the truth is, organizations are just need to become more agile, more efficient. They need to look at building sustainable income. And of course, the whole thing around reserves, I heard somebody recently just said, I've got all these reserves, but I don't want to use them. And I was literally going, that's the reason why you've got the reserves. If this is not a time when we should use reserves, I don't know what is. Charities and churches losing a third of their income. This is your moment. We need to consider that a blessing that we have got reserves. And if we have to use them and we have to invest them, then I think we should, I think it's not a time just to hold reserves, waiting for an even worse crisis. I think this, for some, is big enough. And I've certainly seen, as you look long term, is to kind of look at what's really affected you, what's been good and what's been bad. And certainly, I'm a huge cheerleader for regular income. I have been since I started CAP nearly 25 years ago. And I have to say, the organisations that have built sustainable regular income, either through money and reserves, money they develop from what they do, or through thousands of people giving a few pounds a month, it has given us, it's certainly given CAP an organisation resilience. And I think if you haven't got that resilience, it's okay, God will provide, you will come through, but don't let the push of what you could have done and how more secure you could have been really not influence your next stage. So, there's opportunity here to change and do things differently. And then the third one is that long-term questioning. Is what you do efficient enough? Is it effective enough? Where's it going to be in 5 years' time? Do you see a response to the tsunami of need that our nation has got? So I think the three things can work all simultaneously together, but need different kinds of skills. But that's the agility required of a leader, and it's now. We have to begin to make some of those decisions right now. And I think for leaders, cometh the moment, cometh the time. Let's be bold, let's be honest, let's face the brutal truth without throwing away our faith and our hope. But I think there's a tsunami of need coming, but I think there's a tsunami of some challenging and difficult decisions to be made. And I have deepest, amazement that leaders are going to be able to make some very difficult decisions. Yeah, tough times.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we had the privilege of hosting on one of our webinars Jeremy Anderson, who's treasurer of St Helens Bishopsgate, but also the non-executive director of a very large bank and a very large insurance company. And he's a professional risk manager, if not one of the top risk managers in the world. And his advice was very simple and aligns to your point about spreadsheets, John, very well. He said, you should have 3 spreadsheets: plan A, plan B, and plan C. You're in your contingency plan already. So the worst you probably thought was going to happen has already happened. That plan A it's bad. Yeah. Now, plan B is now your contingency plan to your contingency plan. So you've got to dig deep and say, like in your plan B, what would happen if, and look at the realistic things. So then he said about plan C, and I remember very well what he said, and I think it was very wise words. Use the words, I can't imagine if. I can't imagine if there's a second spike. I can't imagine if the economy goes L-shaped rather than V-shaped or whatever recovery we're predicting. I can't imagine. Well, you just imagined it because you just said it. That's your plan C.
Brutal truth moment, Stuart. Come on, everybody. Do not miss this opportunity to be brutally honest with what could happen, because that's what leaders do. It doesn't mean a lack of faith, but somebody has to look at the brutal truth and has to prepare for that. We have responsibilities to the people we help, to our charity, to our donors, to our staff. Someone has to sit in a room and say, what if, and look at what we would do. Absolutely, absolutely critical. And not pleasant, but leadership's not pleasant, is it? That's not the idea. It's not pleasant.
I agree, John. I mean, we took his advice in stewardship. So we had a plan C meeting. So we did a full risk assessment. We plan A, plan B. So we had our plan C system meeting. I had to stop it. It was just too draining. You're facing, what happens if, and what would you do is brutal. I mean, it was depressing. We had to do it in 2 chunks because it was just so difficult. We've only shown 2 of our trustees plan C because all we were witnessing was that we could face anything. And from that, it's not that we're going to face it, but it gave everybody a great deal of confidence that as a leadership team, we had faced it. We had talked about the unthinkable, and then built our psychology up with a contingency plan, and then had a plan we knew we would operate. And the way we got approval for plan A was because we had a plan B and a plan C. And then what makes us brave and resolute is we know what plan C looks like, and we don't want to go there. And I would very much, it's the most painful thing to do, to face what can go wrong.
Yeah, I think someone said to me, there's one thing about an ostrich with its head in the sand, it gets shot. We cannot have our heads in the sand. It's heads up, it's looking around, it's open, it's brutally honest, but it's also with faith, and it's also seeking the wisdom that we've previously talked about, and friends to help you walk through this. It's not a time to be a lone ranger. It's a time to find friends who are facing the same problems and share the journey with people who will understand how difficult it is. And together, we will find our way through, and God will bring us through, and we'll be more effective, more efficient. As we said, consider it pure joy. It all comes back to our sense of God's guidance and the kind of secrets and amazing wisdom that is within the Word.
John, tell me how CAP has fared. And you gave me a really interesting perspective right at the beginning of this about how it went into this crisis, how that picture's emerged, and how it's looking forward. How do you see that?
Yeah, so I'll be honest. We have reaped a harvest of some ways that God has led us over the years. So the first thing is that through nothing of our skill as leaders, as an organisation, we are a remote working organisation. We work with 1,000 frontline workers in 600 churches. So actually, remote working for us was something that we were able to really get into quickly, which was brilliant. The second thing that has really blessed us is we have over 30,000 regular donors. As you know, I'm known as Mr. Life Changer. Any opportunity since I first started, I've asked people, please would you give £15 a month? And the way that our regular donors have stuck with us has been absolutely breathtaking and humbling. We've lost some large gifts, particularly for some business people whose, sometimes their life work has been lost. So we understand that. But God has replaced it with other things. I think for us as an organisation, we have seen some brilliant innovations, things that would have taken us 2 years, took about 2 weeks. It's been fantastic. Taking some of our products, making them easy, accessible, giving them away to the UK church. A real boldness has come, which I have been cheering all the way. It's definitely what I want. And the agility that I've seen in our young leaders, that this is the first time they've really been tested, and that's been absolutely brilliant. And of course, we did have reserves, and we are willing, as we call it, we're willing to empty those barns if we need to. But fundamentally, we've maintained our focus on the people we serve. And it is that has driven us to really, really keep our service open the best we can. Don't give up and keep going. until you can't. I think that would be my encouragement. And in that space of huge need is an opportunity for God to do a miracle. And I have seen and witnessed many miracles over the last few months of money arriving into small charities, of people giving generously. But also I've seen charities, kind of step forward a little bit with really pushing their asking, because their needs are so great.